In 1944, an American man turned the Sherman tank into a mobile legend. With 4 crewmates, he destroyed 258 German war machines in just 83 days. He wasn't a general, nor a tactical genius. Just a Texas farmer, a former boxer, a machine lover who believed in his own hands. But when he climbed into the turret of In the Mood, he turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. This is a true story. A story of courage, industrial spirit, and unshakable human faith in steel and in each other. A page of history written not in ink, but in motor oil, sweat, and gunpowder smoke. Dawn, September 19, 1944. A thin drizzle falls like mist. Heavy clouds drift over the hills near Aachen, Germany. Somewhere, artillery still rumbles, distant but thudding through the earth like funeral drums. On the muddy road leading into Münsterbusch, an M4A1 Sherman rumbles forward. Its steel hull coated in mud, the 76mm cannon pointed straight ahead. On the turret, the commander stands tall, helmet tilted, soaked coat clinging to his frame. He squints into the gray mist. Inside, 4 soldiers sit in silence. The engine hums. The air reeks of burnt oil. They've been together for 83 days, from Normandy, across France, now at Germany's doorstep. And this morning, just a few more miles remain to complete the mission. The Sherman bears a white-painted name on its side. In the Mood. A cheerful name, the famous Glenn Miller swing tune, but none of them are in the mood to laugh. They know, up ahead lies the Nazi line, tiger guns, Panzerfausts hidden in the trees. But his orders were always simple. Lead, clear the way, don't stop. He is Lafayette Poole, the man American soldiers call with 2 words, War Daddy. This morning, he doesn't know. This will be the final battle of his life. Texas, 25 years earlier. In the sun-scorched plains where windmills never stop spinning in the hot wind, a baby is born in a small wooden house in Odom, San Patricio County. The father looks at the wrinkled newborn and softly says, "This boy looks stubborn already." The child grows up among the smell of engine oil and dust, the chugging sound of tractors and fiery sunsets. He learns self-reliance, how to fix anything with his hands, and believes only labor and willpower give a man value. That boy's name is Lafayette Green Poole. At Taft High School, Poole stands out with his tall frame, broad shoulders, and sharp eyes. He plays football, boxes, and wins an amateur championship with 41 undefeated bouts. But what people remember is not his strength, but how he always helped his opponents up after a fight. "Fight with your fists," he said, "but win with your heart." In 1939, war breaks out in Europe. Through a small radio at home, Poole hears of Nazi Germany, the fall of France, London under bombardment. At age 20, a mechanical engineering student at Texas A&M, he knows America will enter the war sooner or later. On June 14, 1941, Lafayette leaves college and volunteers at Fort Sam Houston, 6 months before Pearl Harbor. His father sees him off with a simple line, "Don't try to be a hero, just do your duty." Lafayette nods. That sentence will follow him for the rest of his life. At Fort Knox, Kentucky, Poole trains to drive and command tanks. The first time he touches the steel body of the M4 Sherman, he feels as if he's touching a living being, strong, hot, and dangerous. Sherman wasn't the best machine. Compared to Germany's Tiger or Panther, it lacked firepower and armor. But to Poole, it was the American tank. Simple, practical, easy to repair and replace. A symbol of America's industrial spirit. "A machine only matters if it works today," he said, "not if it promises tomorrow." In 1943, Poole is assigned to the 3rd Armored Division. Spearhead. That name says it all. They're the vanguard, the ones who break ground and take the first hit. At Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, Poole assembles his tank crew, 4 young soldiers who will ride through hell with him. Wilbert Baby Richards, the driver, small and quick. Delbert Jailbird Boggs, the loader, hot-headed but fiercely loyal. Willis Groundhog Aller, the gunner, cold, accurate. Bertrand Schoolboy Close, the machine gunner, just 19. When it came time to name the new Sherman, Richards grinned. "Why not call it In the Mood? Sounds fun." The whole crew burst out laughing, and the name stuck. In the Mood, Glenn Miller's swing tune, cheerful amidst war, capturing the true American spirit, joyful, brave, unafraid. In early 1944, they were deployed to England, preparing for Operation Overlord, the largest invasion in history. Through Kent's fog, the Shermans roared down dirt roads. The smell of gasoline, oil, and gun smoke blended together, the signature scent of mechanized war. Poole taught his crew everything: shooting, maneuvering, fixing the engine in pitch dark. He was strict but fair, and they trusted him completely. At dawn on June 29, 1944, 3 weeks after D-Day, the 3rd Armored Division left the beaches of Normandy. On roads littered with burnt-out vehicles and ruined villages, Poole stood tall on the turret, binoculars in hand. Behind him, Richards yelled over the engine roar, "War Daddy, we starting now?" Poole smiled, voice deep and firm. "Yeah, from now on, this ain't training anymore." The roar of In the Mood joined the spearhead column. A steel road opened ahead, and from that moment, a legend was born. Normandy skies, June 1944. Wheat fields crushed into mud by artillery. Trucks, horses, even men, all tangled under a rain of bullets. This was the first battlefield for Lafayette Poole and the crew of In the Mood. When the Sherman's first track rolled onto French soil, Poole knew. Everything they'd trained for over the past 2 years would now decide whether they lived or died. He opened the turret hatch, scanning the distance. Ahead were narrow roads filled with craters and rubble. "Richards, check the pressure," he said softly. "Holding at 45, War Daddy," the driver replied. "Jailbird, check the load." "All set, boss." "Groundhog, main gun safety on?" "Yep, just say the word fire." Voices inside a tank are usually drowned by the engine, but everyone could hear Poole clearly. He spoke slow, firm, and never had to repeat himself. To them, he wasn't just a commander. He was War Daddy, the father of these steel sons. Their first morning at Villiers-Fossard, they met the enemy. A German anti-tank gun hid behind a tree line, waiting for the Americans to advance. The first shot ripped the ground in front of the Sherman. Dirt flew. The whole tank shook. "Enemy gun! 3 o'clock!" Oler shouted. Poole stayed calm. 12 degrees left. AP round. Fire. A blast. A flash of light. The German gun exploded into dust. Richards exhaled. Boggs slapped Oler's shoulder, grinning. "One and done." Poole said only one thing. "Don't celebrate. There's more coming." From that day on, the name In the Mood started making rounds in the battalion. A thin-skinned Sherman, outgunned, but always in front, always surviving, always winning. Poole wasn't easy. He was strict to the point of being cold. Each night, when the column stopped, he inspected every bearing, every track, every oil drum. If Boggs forgot to clean the barrel, he'd make him do it all over. If Richard started the engine a few seconds late, Poole said nothing. But one look from him was enough to make the whole crew know they messed up. But he was also the one who shared his rations with younger soldiers. When Close had malaria, Poole sat by him all night, covering him with blankets and telling stories of Texas. "Back home, summer gets so hot it melts steel, but Texans don't melt," he said with a soft laugh. His words, simple as they were, made them believe they wouldn't die. In the spearhead formation, Shermans were often destroyed within hours of engagement. But the In the Mood crew was different. They knew each other so well, They didn't need orders. When Poole tilted his head left, Richards turned the tank. When Poole furrowed his brow, Boggs had already loaded a round. Oehler fired by instinct, and almost never missed. In the first 3 weeks, they destroyed 12 German tanks, 30 armored vehicles, 1 infantry platoon, and captured over 70 prisoners. But inside the tank, no one spoke of glory. They talked about home, about music, about the smell of instant coffee in their K-rations. Richards always turned on the radio first after every battle. The tune "In the Mood" played amid the smoke. Its cheerful swing beat in sharp contrast to the wreckage around them. Oehler wiped his gun and chuckled. "Music's the only thing that makes me believe I'm still alive." Mid-July, Spearhead joined Operation Cobra, America's breakout strike at St. Lo. They pushed through ruined villages and barbed fences. No clear front line, only smoke, fire, and screaming. Once, ambushed by 2 Panther tanks, Poole ordered Richards to accelerate. Their Sherman blasted through the smoke, flanking the enemy. At 70 meters, Oehler fired. The first round pierced the Panther's armor. Flames erupted. The second Panther turned its turret, but before it could aim, Boggs hit it with 2 explosive shells. The whole thing lasted under 40 seconds. Then silence. Inside the tank, Poole said only, "That's why we're still alive." From Saint-Lô to Argentan, from Falaise to Chartres, they fought non-stop. In just 83 days, In the Mood destroyed 258 tanks and vehicles, killed over 1,000 German soldiers, and captured 250 prisoners. A record no other tank crew in the world has ever matched. But to Poole, the numbers didn't matter. He didn't track his kills or boast. When asked his secret, he simply said, "I had 4 great soldiers, and we trusted each other." One August night after a battle near Falaise, Spearhead halted to rest. Richards lay on the tank's hull, eyes on the stars. "War Daddy, you think we'll make it out alive?" Poole smiled gently. "If I didn't think so, I wouldn't get on the turret." Oehler, sitting nearby, murmured, "I'm not scared of dying. I'm scared I won't get to fire my last shot." Poole turned to them, gaze kind but steady. "Listen, war isn't a game. But if we're here, we'll give it everything we've got. Not for medals, not for fame, but for the guy next to us." The 4 soldiers sat in silence. Far off, artillery still thundered. In the black sky, a single star shimmered, its reflection glinting off the steel body of In the Mood. It wasn't just a tank. It was their only home on the battlefield. In war, every legend must end. The only question is, does it end in silence or in fire and blood? August 1944. Northern France was drowning in smoke. The Allies were closing the jaws around the Falaise pocket, where nearly 100,000 German troops were being trapped. It was called the Falaise Gap, and the mission of the 3rd Armored Division was to shut it tight. On the dirt roads around Argentan, thousands of German vehicles were fleeing. Artillery thundered, planes screamed. The Sherman's engines roared alongside the deep growl of tigers, a mad symphony of metal. At the tip of the spear, In the Mood still led the charge, its body stained with blood and dust, exhaust pipes coughing white smoke. Poole stood on the turret, binoculars fixed ahead. On the horizon, fire lit the sky red. "Groundhog, something ahead. 400 meters to the right." "Got it, War Daddy. 2 Panthers, changing position." Poole nodded. "Boggs, load AP. Richards, hold speed. Don't stop." The Sherman surged over a hill, its tracks grinding into the mud with a chilling screech. The first German shot exploded near the tank, flinging mud and smoke. Poole didn't flinch. He just shouted, "Fire!" Oehler pulled the trigger. The 76mm cannon thundered. A flash, then one Panther burst into flame, black smoke curling into the sky. The second Panther turned its turret and fired back. The shell scraped the Sherman's side armor, shaking the entire hull. Richards hissed, "They've got our range." "It's fine," Poole said calmly. "Close in, 30 more meters." As the Panther reloaded, Poole's Sherman burst out of the smoke, skidding across a ditch, cannon now just over 50 meters from target. "Fire again!" Aller let off a second shot, a sharp blast. The second Panther slumped into flames. No one said a word. Boggs wiped his sweat. Richards gripped the wheel. Poole looked forward, voice steady. "Mark down 2 more. Keep going." Day by day, Falaise became a graveyard of steel. Village roads littered with scorched tanks, flipped trucks, rifles scattered in the grass. Overhead, hawks began to appear, the scavengers after war. In the Mood, fought for 8 straight days with almost no sleep. Ammo, fuel, food, all had to be requested amid the chaos. Many tank crews had been wiped out, with too few survivors to man replacements. Poole passed smoking Sherman hulls in silence. That night, they stopped at the forest's edge. Close, the youngest, sat atop the tank, hands trembling as he held his ration tin. "War Daddy, how many people have we killed?" Poole stayed quiet for a moment, then replied, "Enough so they can't kill anyone else." "Aren't you afraid?" Close asked. "Of course," Poole answered, his voice low. "But if I'm afraid, the guy behind me dies. So I keep going." Those words, soft as they were, etched deep into the hearts of all 4 men. Morning of August 20th, 1944. The German army was collapsing. Falaise was rubble, thick with the smell of gunpowder and burned bodies. Poole received orders to capture a small village south of Argentan, Champassu. As In the Mood led the convoy into the village, they met heavy resistance. An 88 mm anti-tank gun blasted down the main street. Roofs collapsed, German soldiers scattered. Richards yelled, "88 at the church corner." "Groundhog, take it out," Poole ordered. Oehler turned the gun and fired. Direct hit. The church collapsed. The German gun exploded. Boggs cheered, "That's it!" But Poole didn't smile. He saw something flash to the left. "Richards, reverse. There's something in the brush." Before he finished, a Panzerfaust struck the Sherman's side. The blast tore through the armor. Black smoke, flames, screams. Oehler was thrown from his seat. Boggs slumped over, blood soaking his shirt. Close scrambled to open the turret hatch. "Get out now!" Poole shouted, dragging each man out. The fire spread fast. Spare ammo began cooking off inside the hull. Richards was badly wounded. Poole carried him on his back, pulling him clear. Behind them, In the Mood exploded, a fireball rising into the sky. They rolled into a ditch, motionless. In the distance, artillery still thundered. Poole looked up at the flames consuming the Sherman, their home. His voice cracked. "She's gone, my little girl." That was the last time he ever saw In the Mood. Poole was gravely wounded. Shrapnel shattered his right leg, destroying the knee. He was rescued and evacuated to the rear, in a coma for days. 3 crew members survived. Boggs, the loader, didn't make it. When Poole woke up in a hospital in England, he was told, "You've completed 83 days of combat, 258 enemy vehicles destroyed. You are the most effective tank commander in U.S. Army history." He said nothing, just stared out the window, where pale light fell on the wooden crutches beside his bed. He would never climb a turret again. A medic asked, "Do you regret it, Sergeant Poole?" Poole shook his head slowly. "No. I lived enough for 5 men." Outside, the radio softly played In the Mood. That swing tune, once a beacon of hope in the battlefield, now echoed faintly through the sterile white hospital hallway. On the bed, Lafayette Poole closed his eyes. The golden light of late afternoon brushed his weathered, sunburnt face. The war had taken his legs, but left America a legend. They say some soldiers leave the battlefield, but the war never leaves them. Lafayette Poole was different. He came home not with fear, but with an unbreakable spirit. He woke up in a military hospital in England. His legs were heavily bandaged. A piece of shrapnel had shattered his right knee, and the doctors said, "If we don't amputate, you'll die from infection." Poole simply nodded, asking no further questions. When the anesthesia wore off, the first thing he asked wasn't about his leg. He asked, "What about my boys?" Boggs was dead. Close was badly wounded. Oler and Richards survived. The news left him silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, lips tight, "So 3 of us are still alive. That's enough to tell the story." In the fall of 1944, Lafayette Poole returned to America. A year earlier, he had been War Daddy, the man who rode steel. Now, he returned on wooden crutches. Texas welcomed him with blazing fields and the hum of cicadas. The village where he was born hung American flags down Main Street. The townspeople came out to greet the hero, but Poole simply bowed his head and smiled gently. "I'm not a hero," he said. "The heroes are the ones who didn't come back." At first, he didn't say much. His crutches echoed against concrete, a dry, heavy sound like distant gunfire. But one day, he returned to the training camp at Fort Knox, the place that had once taught him how to drive a Sherman. They say that day, he stepped onto the stage, took off his crutches, leaned on the table, and looked out at hundreds of young recruits. He spoke slowly, voice raspy but firm. "When you're inside a tank, don't think you're driving steel. Steel is only strong when there's a human heart guiding it. And if that heart trembles, no armor is thick enough." The entire room fell silent. From that day, Poole was no longer just a war storyteller. He became an inspiration to generations of American tankers. After the war, Lafayette Poole continued serving in the Armored Reserves. He learned to drive a car again, taught Texas students mechanics and engineering. The man who once rode a Sherman now worked hunched over Ford engines, hands greasy, grinning. "Any kind of steel is worth something, if you know how to make it come alive." He married and had 3 children. His eldest son later joined the military, following in his father's footsteps. Sometimes, on golden afternoons, neighbors saw Poole sitting on his porch, listening to "In the Mood" on an old radio. He never talked about the war. But when the music played, his eyes lit up, just like they did in the days when he rode "In the Mood" through fire and smoke. In 1960, Lafayette Poole officially retired with the rank of sergeant. His prosthetic legs made him walk slowly, but his voice remained strong. He spent his time speaking to young people, engineering students, and new soldiers. His final speech included this line: "I lost my legs, but I didn't lose my direction. This world always needs those who dare to move forward, whether on steel, on willpower, or on wooden crutches." Hundreds rose to applaud. In that moment, he wasn't just a man with no legs. He was War Daddy again, the man out front, the one who never stopped. In 1991, Lafayette Green Poole passed away at the age of 73. On his headstone in Texas, a single line is engraved: Lafayette G. Poole, War Daddy. Veterans, recruits, and even those who never knew him still come to lay flowers. Not just because he was the greatest tank ace, but because in him they saw the face of America. Strong, resilient, and unbreakable. Above the Texas plains, the sunset burns red like molten steel. Somewhere, "In the Mood" plays in the wind, mingling with the rustle of the fields. A legend may have ended, but his spirit, and America's, keeps on rolling. Because sometimes, the true legend isn't the tank. It's the man behind the wheel. War may end, but legends do not. Some names, even long at rest, continue to live on in the memory of a nation. After World War II, Lafayette Green Poole became a singular symbol within the U.S. Armored Forces, not only because he was the most effective tank commander, but because he embodied what Americans honor most: courage, conviction, and an unyielding will. At armored training schools, the name War Daddy was spoken like a living lesson. New recruits learned to read maps the way he read battlefields, to listen to engines the way he once listened to his own heartbeat. One officer once said, "We don't teach them how to drive Shermans. We teach them to drive like Poole." In the post-war years, Lafayette Poole lived quietly in Texas, but his legend never faded. Articles, military journals, and reserve force lectures all spoke of him. When asked about his record of 258 enemy tanks destroyed, Poole simply smiled. "I didn't fight to rack up numbers. I fought so we wouldn't have to count the fallen." That line stayed with many young soldiers. In 1952, Poole was invited back to Fort Knox, where he once trained new recruits. This time, he returned as a legendary hero. Behind him stood a new generation of tankers, men raised in peace, but forged in the spirit of those who came before. He said, "Remember this. Technology will change. Tanks will be faster. Guns will be bigger. But one thing will never change: the human being behind the wheel." That quote was later engraved on a brass plaque at the U.S. Armor Museum, where his photo and service record are displayed. Decades later, as Hollywood began revisiting soldier stories, filmmakers touched his legacy. Director David Ayer, while writing the script for Fury, 2014, drew direct inspiration from Lafayette Poole, the man who rode the Sherman in the mood, known by his men with two simple words: War Daddy. The character played by Brad Pitt, a cold, fearless, yet deeply human commander, was a cinematic rebirth of Lafayette Poole. In the film, we see real-life echoes: a 5-man tank crew, a Sherman leading the charge across Europe, and a commander who was the spiritual father of his Steel Sons. When Fury premiered, American veterans stood in theaters, silent as the final credits rolled. Because they knew, behind the fictional image stood a real man, an ordinary Texan who wrote a chapter of history in smoke and steel. Today, at the museum in Fort Hood, Texas, a black and white photo rests behind glass, Lafayette Poole beside his Sherman, hand on the cannon, wearing a gentle smile. Beneath the photo is a simple inscription: "The spirit of the American armor." Every year, thousands of new recruits visit that place. They pause before the picture, silent for a few seconds, then step out onto the training grounds to start the engines of their M1 Abrams. The roar echoes, and in that metallic thunder, something of "in the mood" still lives, still drives forward. A memory of war may fade, but spirit does not. Lafayette Poole was not just a soldier. He was proof that America's true power doesn't lie in its steel, but in the people who master it. Nearly 80 years have passed. The fields of Normandy are green again. The sound of artillery lingers only in film and memory. But whenever "In the Mood" plays somewhere, people still remember him, the Texas man who rode a Sherman, the one who led, the one who never stopped. Legends don't die. They simply take new shape. Now it lives in every tank that rolls, in every young soldier who carries the spirit of War Daddy, and in the belief that no road is ever too far if we just keep moving forward. The 20th century closed with swing music, black and white photographs, and the fading faces of soldiers lost to time. But some stories, no matter how many years pass, still shine as brightly as a weld on steel. Because they are not just about war, but about the strength of the human spirit. The story of Lafayette Green Poole is one of them. A Texas farmer, a boxer, a mechanical engineer, Then a warrior riding a Sherman, he became a symbol of America's industrial soul, where man and machine merged to create unstoppable power. In just 83 short days of military service, he passed through the fire of war like a storm of steel, and emerged not seeking glory, but holding on to the belief that real strength doesn't lie in the machine, but in the heart behind it. When he lost his legs, America didn't lose a soldier. It gained a symbol of resilience, willpower, and the will to live. Today, in a new century, as Abrams tanks thunder across deserts and technology surpasses anything imagined in the days of the Sherman, one can still see a part of Lafayette Poole's spirit in every American soldier, a steadfast belief that no road is ever too far as long as we keep moving forward. In a museum, the old photo remains. The eyes of that Texas man still look forward, as if he's still driving in the mood across the fields of Normandy, still giving the order, "Lead, clear the way, don't stop." And somewhere, in the rumble of engines, in the chorus of metal and wind, you can still hear the familiar swing of Glenn Miller, the tune that followed Poole and his crew through hell. A joyful song, but beneath it beat the iron heart of an entire generation. Lafayette Poole is gone, but his legacy remains. In every soldier, in every layer of armor, in every soul who rises after loss. Because in the end, America's greatest strength isn't found in guns or engines. It's in those who dare to stand amid the rubble, to rebuild, and to believe that tomorrow can be better. The legend of War Daddy may have ended, but that spirit lives on in every breath of modern America, strong, unbreakable, and forever unyielding. Because legends never die. They just change form and keep moving forward.